guys, it's Maggie and Murphy here from Knitting in the Park, and we're really excited today. Well, I'm excited, Murphy's just kind of sleepy. We're ready to talk about how to start your knitting project. So we've talked a lot about knitting in the past videos if you've been following along, what it is, what you need, and now we're talking about how to actually do it. So in this video, we're going to discuss casting on. What is casting on? It basically means creating new stitches. So unlike crochet, let's say, where you're going to chain a foundational row to create the stitches that you need in the project, we need to put stitches on the needle to get started. Now, if you're working from a project, they'll tell you how many stitches to cast on in the beginning. So we're going to work today with a knitted cast on. A knitted cast on is the most basic foundational type of casting on that you can learn. It's pretty much the first method that any knitter learns, and it's really simple. And it's a great setup because it teaches you the knit stitch, which is the basic stitch that you'll be working with for the most part in your new project. So I'm gonna get set up here on my table and meet you back here in a minute. So we're back, we're ready, we're sitting at my coffee table here, and we're ready to learn how to cast stitches on or create our first foundational row for our knitting project. I've got just some spare yarn here that we're going to play around with. You're welcome to start your project right now with me, or just use that same yarn to kind of practice and get a feel for the 2 needles in your hand and creating new stitches. We're doing the knitted cast on, which is great practice or a setup for the knit stitches that we're going to learn to work later on. The first step in any knitting project is to create a slip knot. This is kind of like the anchor for your whole work. Now, if you drop a stitch, it might still come unraveled, but this is at least to give us an anchor point, something to start our project from. To make a slip knot, it's very easy. You can fast forward if you already know how to do this, but take your yarn, right? Grab maybe a 6 to an 8-inch tail and let it just kind of hang off to the side here. This will come into play later on when you're done with your project and you're going to work in all the ends of yarn. I like to just use my hand here, so I let the yarn drape over my fingers and I just wrap it around. So one time. 1 loop around the fingers is all you need. Now you've got 1/2 of your loop that sits to the right and 1/2 that kind of sits to the left or back. Pinch where they kind of meet, and you're going to turn it so that now 1 strand is on top and 1 strand is behind. The strand that's on top or in front here, you're going to let drape over the back, okay? So it's hanging behind my fingers now, and I'm just going to bring it forward so you can see it kind of looks like almost like a do not enter, right? So you've got the circle with the bar. And now to make the slip knot, we're going to pinch that bar and bring it forward or through the circle. So you just take your little crab claw here, your index finger and your thumb, grab that bar that's in the center and pull it through. Now you can let everything just kind of dangle here and then grab those 2 ends and kind of pull them tight until we've created that slip knot. Now you have your first little itty bitty baby stitch. Check it out. You guys are already on your way to starting your first project if you're gonna knit through. So it doesn't really matter that much which way you place this loop on your needles. It can go either direction, so don't freak out here. So you're just going to place it on 1 needle. And again, kind of play with those 2 ends of yarn, those 2 strands to get it snug. It doesn't have to be tight. If you're nervous, your stitches are going to be tight, and when you go to knit back through and start working your project, it'll be a little bit tougher. So just nice relaxed hands here. Now we're going to start working or creating new stitches. So we're going to knit them onto your needle. This is where we want to just be careful here that this yarn tail, just kind of off to the side, and we focus on the working yarn, or the yarn that's attached to your skein, your ball of yarn here. If you use the tail, you'll get to the end and then you won't be able to turn the work and knit back across. So something to worry about later, but make sure that you're using the part or the strand that's attached to your skein of yarn. So the needle we put the stitch on, that slip knot, it's going to go in the left hand. You're going to pick your other needle up with your right hand. If you look at the needle in the left hand, there is a left side of the stitch and a right side of the stitch. If you're holding it the way I am, there's also a front side of the stitch and a back. Not super important. I know it's a lot to remember now, but just pointing out the different kind of components or characteristics of your stitch here. The needle in the right hand is going to go on the left side, from the left to the right, from the front to the back. Stick with me, it's not too difficult here. So we're going to take the right needle and kind of insert it into the stitch. You're going to go from the left side, right? If I went from the right side, I would be going this way, and we don't want to, that's not the way we want to work right now. That's a different stitch for later on, for another day. So you're going to take the right needle from the left side of the stitch, make sure it goes cleanly through so we're not spearing half of a strand of yarn. Now, I like to kind of let everything rest in my left hand, and I'm going to use my right hand to work the yarn around. So I'm going to pause here and just show you the way I hold my needles when I'm doing this. So in my left hand, my ring finger and my pinky finger are what holds, so I like to hold the tail of yarn out of the way that we're not working with, and also hold the left needle. It's kind of like learning to use chopsticks, guys. It's foreign at first, you'll get it later on. And then I use my middle finger, my index finger, and my thumb to hold the tips of the needles and also to pinch my right hand needle. So I'm going to let my right hand needle kind of just hang out there for a second. I'm going to take my yarn, that's my working yarn here, and I'm going to go behind and around to the front and let it drape over my right hand needle. So this is what we're going to grab and pull through to create the first stitch. Sorry guys, my feet are falling asleep here. Okay, so we're going to grab our right hand needle again, and this is the yarn that we've wrapped, and we're going to just kind of grab it and pull it through. So this is the slip knot, this is the yarn we've wrapped around the needle, and now we've just pulled it through the slip knot. Now what do? You're going to take that, might have to work some slack here. We're going to take the stitch that's now on our right needle, put it on the left, so work it over top, and then just pull your working yarn just so that it's kind of in between loose and snug. You don't want to be too tight and you don't want to be too loose. So now we have 2 stitches on our left hand needle. You just worked your first stitch in knitting. Congratulations. So now you'll see that this is the left of the slip knot, this is in between, this is the left side of your new stitch, right here, and this is the right side. So we're going to go from the left, work right in through that new stitch, wrap your yarn around, and then use your right needle to catch that yarn that you've wrapped and pull it through. Now that we've got that stitch, we're just going to place it on the left hand needle and then use your working yarn to kind of pull that nice and snug. So you go from the left side of that new stitch through. I like to let my right needle go higher, up further, at least in the beginning, because it helps me see which needle I'm wrapping my yarn around. And then you're going to articulate that right hand needle so that you can catch that yarn and pull it through. And then we put it back on the left hand needle. You can keep working that way, or you can try now. There's a little bit of a different way to hold your yarn if you'd like. So you insert from left to right. How do I hold my yarn? So one way is to let that yarn drape across your hand again, just like we did when we created the slip knot. The bottom 2 or 3 fingers will wrap around the yarn loosely. You don't need a death grip on it. And then you're letting the working yarn just drape over your index finger. And then this is what you can use to work the yarn so you're not dropping it every single time. Some people like to hold the working yarn in their right hand. Some people like to hold it in their left hand. There's lots of different styles in knitting. Keep in mind that I'm just showing you one here, so if this doesn't work for you, go back to the internet and do some more searches and find something that does work. I'm teaching a dear friend right now, and she likes to hold the yarn in her left hand, which is a bit of a challenge for me because I throw my stitches. I hold my working yarn in the right hand. So maybe together we'll learn how to continental knit. We'll see. So I'm just continuing to work my stitches here. If it helps, you can kind of hide your previous stitches on the left-hand needle with your thumb so that you only can see or identify that last stitch that you've worked. Insert your needle from left through to the right side. Again, make sure that you're not spearing and only grabbing part of the strand of yarn. You want to go cleanly through and then wrap the yarn around, grab it, pull it through. Work it so that it's nice and snug. So go from left to right, through the needle, or through the stitch, wrap your working yarn around, and then pull it through. So another thing I like to do, and you'll probably see me habitually doing it here, is using my left index finger to help work the stitch. So by placing my finger here, I know some knitters are probably like, what the heck is she doing? I know when my needle, my right needle, is getting to the point where I've got to grab the new stitch. So it's just kind of some additional support, right? So I wrap my yarn around here. To me, it just feels like I'm not going to lose my grip on that right needle and kind of let it just go back through without, slip through without grabbing the yarn. So you might have to start kind of moving your stitches around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right, so we're getting to the point where we're probably getting close to the number of stitches we're ready to work our project with. But I'm going to stop here for now, and I'll meet you back here in another video and we can learn how to actually knit back across. So you'll see that your working yarn, when you started, it was over here next to your tail. And now that you've created some stitches with that yarn, it's over here on the very right end of your project. So this is what we'll do, is we'll start to knit back across this, and that will be our first row that we've worked. But like I said, that's another video. I don't want to make this one too long. So make sure that you subscribe so you get these videos as they are posted, and we can knit together, which is extremely exciting, guys. I'm proud of you. Great job. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways to cast on. There's a lot of different techniques out there, so feel free, Google around, find something that works for you. If this hasn't, I hope it has. And I'll see you back here again soon.